You're listening to Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology. I am your host, Jeff Henshaw. Thanks for tuning in. Cosmic Cousins is dedicated to honoring the interconnectedness of our universal family through embodied health, self-discovery, and deeper learning. And it is here to bring you back into alignment with the cosmos. So thank you for being here as always. Hey Cosmic Cousins, welcome back to another week of the show. Happy Aries Full Moon to you. This one's coming in hot. I've got a candle lit here. I would encourage you to do the same to honor this cardinal fire sign, our personal cardinal sign of Aries. The Ram. I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule. This is the esoteric phrase for Aries, as channeled by Alice Bailey. I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule. I often think of the ram with the spiral horns, this symbol of evolution, the evolution of consciousness, the sole individual that chose to incarnate here on this planet to evolve. We all have Aries somewhere in our chart. And so we are honoring our Aries placement on this full moon, placements. And for those of you who are Aries, sun, moon, or rising, this is a powerful lunation for you. And also for our Libras, this is the sign that you evolve through. Libra, the sign of relationship and harmony, evolving through this individualistic energy of Aries, the initiator. So, yes, this episode is a nice one. We have a few different collaborations going on in that Libran way. So on this episode, I am excited because I have one of my mentorship students, Racheli, is going to share a reflection and a song about this Aries-Libra polarity. So we have that to look forward to. We're joined by my friends Brandon Alter and Angel Lopez, also known as the Spiritual Gayz. And in our conversation, we go in deep, talking all things Aries, but particularly Chiron in Aries, because this full moon is hanging out with Chiron in the sky. And so something that I've been enjoying doing over the past few episodes is taking a phrase from that conversation and making that the title of the episode. And so Brandon said, "Living the Rainbow of Pain," which really struck a chord within me. So that's the title of this episode. It's the Aries Full Moon, Living the Rainbow of Pain. And we'll explore that more as we get to that conversation. So I do have just one announcement today. Recently, I had the honor of being on Tandy Gutierrez's podcast, The Magic Spark, which is quite in alignment with the Chiron themes that we'll be exploring today, because we get intimate in that conversation discussing my own wounds and journey with healing. And it felt very vulnerable to share in this way. I had like a big contraction after having that time with her. I often think of it as like a vulnerability hangover, but Tandy held space in a really loving and supportive way, and it was an honor for me to connect with her in that way. So if you are wanting extra reflection on your own healing journey on this Aries full moon, perhaps you'll check out that episode. It's titled "The Wound of Body and Abandonment," and I put a link in the show notes to it. So that is my update for you for this full moon episode. And at this time, I think we're ready to get into and explore all that we have for this episode. So go ahead and start to bring your awareness to your body and your breath as we transition into the Aries full moon. So breathing into the head, perhaps you place your hands on your head. This is Aries, part of the body, the head, the brain, the face. So I often find when working with Aries energy that it's nice to invite yourself to soften through these parts of the body. So allow the face to get heavy. Perhaps you massage the temples, the jawline, the hairline. And as you exhale, you can release any stagnant energy that's living in the brain, the head, and the face. And as you inhale, you can invite new life in here. Our Aries full moon affirmation: it is safe for me to be an individual. You can breathe that into the head. And as you exhale, you could release anything that is stagnant or blocking you from fully embodying that truth. It is safe for me to be an individual. I have a right to be on this planet. I am a teacher and student of life. This is our Aries full moon affirmation. It is safe for me to be an individual. I have a right to be on this planet. I am a teacher and student of life. So each lunation, we gather on the new and the full moon. If you're new here, welcome. This is our ritual from my heart to yours, free offering. And it's my intention that you do create this as a ritual for yourself. I always offer 3 phrases, and these 3 phrases are sometimes traditional phrases associated with the zodiac signs. Sometimes they are inspired by the certain aspects that are taking place. Like, for instance, this full moon is conjunct Chiron, often referred to as the wounded healer. And so our first phrase for this Aries full moon is I heal, as inspired by Chiron. I heal, I embark, I start anew. I heal, I embark, I start anew. So this can be something that you repeat to yourself when you're meditating on the Aries full moon. You could write them down. You could elaborate on them. What are you healing at this time? What are you embarking on? And how are you starting anew? I was interested in this phrase, I start anew. It came through and I was curious about it. So let's look it back up. Start anew. What does it mean exactly? So I looked up the definition, and I found it interesting because I didn't actually quite realize that it meant like redoing something. Yes, so here is the definition of anew. For an additional time, and anew are different form. A story told anew on film, to begin anew. So, excuse me if that's really obvious, but for some reason I didn't actually realize that this was a redoing of something, but it feels really right, particularly since this is Libra season with the Aries full moon. We start things in Aries season, but here in Libra season, we have the opportunity, particularly on the Aries full moon, to revisit our intentions that we may have set there at the spring equinox as we find ourselves at the autumn equinox. And if you're on the southern hemisphere, it's the reverse, right? Autumn equinox, and now you're in the spring equinox. But either way, we're at this pivotal balancing point of the year. And there's something about starting anew as well, because we have this long transit taking place this year, which is Mars and Gemini. We're going to be experiencing this Mars retrograde this autumn and into next year. We'll explore that today, this Mars and Gemini transit. It's important for us because Aries is ruled by Mars. And so Mars is currently in Gemini. So I heal, I embark, I start anew. The tarot cards that I have out for us, we have the Emperor, which is the soul growth for Aries. We have the Lovers, which is Gemini's card. Mars is in Gemini. And I also placed out the Nine of Wands, which is one of a few cards that I connect to Chiron. But the Nine of Wands typically shows someone who has bandages on, and they look like they either are about to go to war or that they were beat up. They've experienced some trauma. They've experienced some wounds and abandonment. But they also have that fierce, fiery nature of Chiron and Aries. So the Nine of Wands felt really resonant for me for meditating on Chiron. So the Emperor, the Lovers, and the Nine of Wands, perhaps you place these cards out yourself. So on this full moon, The Sun in Libra is conjunct Venus in Libra. This is a really beautiful conjunction. There's a certain level of peace and beauty that's available to us, particularly in relational awareness. Venus is the ruling planet for Libra. So having the Sun and Venus together in Libra, we may find this sense of peace and beauty and the balance of nature. I have been really enjoying the sunsets this time of year. It's actually been really beautiful this October in the Pacific Northwest. It's been much warmer than it typically is, and it's been really sunny. So I've been spending more time out in nature, but also the days are getting shorter. So there's a sense of coming back home and being a little bit more balanced and finding more time for me to make my own food and to reconnect to my yoga practice and to collaborate and connect with friends in a new way. This is what Libra season brings us. So this is amplified by having Venus in Libra right now. And so we may find this in the balance of nature, this Sun, Venus, and Libra conjunction. We may find it in the comfort of collaboration. We may find it in the ability to communicate our truth more clearly right now with fairness, with objectivity, with precision. This is Libra. Libra, the air sign, gives us an objective perspective so that we can remove ourselves from the emotion and see what is balanced and fair. While at the same time, on the other side of the astrological wheel, this full moon is in Aries, and it's the opposite of Libra. Aries is not about fairness and objectivity. Aries is about living presently in this moment and staying true to the desire, to the passion that lives within. And this full moon in Aries is conjunct Chiron in Aries. And so this may bring about profound realizations in relationship to your own personal power. Aries, the individual, across from Libra, the collaborator. So Chiron is often referred to as the wounded healer. I like to think of Chiron as the wounded teacher, and it speaks to the healing of trauma and abandonment wounds through our intellectual and creative pursuits. And Aries reminds us to set clear boundaries for personal growth. Aries teaches Libra this. And so on this full moon with Chiron, your own healership potential as a teacher, as a mentor, is encouraged as you continue to carve out a new path for yourself. So how might you strive? This is a question for us. How might you strive towards peace and balance in your relationships while creating boundaries for the ever-growing need to evolve into the fierce individual that you are? It's kind of a long question, so I'll read it again. But a question for reflection for us for this particular Aries full moon. How might you strive towards peace and balance in relationships while creating boundaries for the ever-growing need to evolve into the fierce individual that you are? So what is important to remember with Aries? And I think for me, as someone that has Mars in Aries, North Node in Aries, North Node conjunct Eris in Aries, this is my own chart. I also have Vesta in Aries. What's important to remember with Aries is that you do not need to do this alone. I think Aries energy, it likes to do things on its own. It's almost easier to do things on its own. But having Aries evolves through Libra, so there's a sense of having relationships. And so for Aries, this can be really powerful when the relationships are with a teacher or a mentor or a role model, someone to look up to. And Chiron is the teacher, so this is being highlighted for us. So something that I've done in my own life, and perhaps you take it upon yourself to do that as well, is to reconnect with books and mentors and teachers that have encouraged your soul growth. So I have a stack of books out right now that have helped me heal in my own life. And I'm honoring those teachers on this full moon. Be gentle as you are in this process. Libra season is reminding us to slow down and recalibrate, while this Aries full moon is encouraging us to step up into our power, and it does beckon new beginnings for us. Aries is the sunrise, Libra is the sunset. So this Aries full moon, Sunday, October 9th, 2022, at 1:54 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it's found at the 17 degrees of Aries. So you can look around that in your chart. You can also look to 14 degrees of Aries. This is where Chiron currently is. And look to your other signs too. If you have things around these degrees in any of the other signs, then they will be making an aspect to this full moon. Some more questions for reflection for us. Who am I? This is always a great question to ask when working with Aries. Who am I? What do I desire? How am I being invited to more lovingly stand in my power? Some major emperor vibes here. Again, an affirmation for us. It is safe for me to be an individual. I have a right to be on this planet. I am a teacher and student of life. So since Aries is the sign of the individual, I thought I would share and reflect on my own individual birth chart. And I find myself reflecting on quite a bit on this Aries full moon. So in my own birth chart, I have the North Node of Fate in Aries at the 14th degree. And this placement in my chart is the exact degree that transiting Chiron is currently at in Aries. So this placement, the North Node of Aries in my own birth chart, has encouraged me to continually to carve out a path for myself as an individual. And it really speaks to me as a placement for me to meditate on my own identity as a teacher, as a member of the LGBTQ community. So this whole year and into next year, I am on a deep internal journey of healing with Chiron, transiting my North Node of Fate. And I'm being invited to step up and into myself in a whole new way. So I wanted to share this too. You might want to put the Hermit card out too. The Hermit could be a card that we use to represent Chiron. If you look in the 5th Spirit Tarot, if you look closely, and I've added this in the newsletter, again, everything that I'm sharing right now, you can read along with these words. The newsletter is essentially a visual and almost like a script for the episode. I will deviate a little bit from what I'm sharing and writing, and I'll elaborate on certain things. But essentially, this is all written out, and there's a beautiful visual. So if you do want to get the newsletter, I only send the newsletter out on the new and the full moon. So yeah, I've included an image of the Hermit from the 5th Spirit Tarot, but the Hermit card here displays the glyph for Chiron, which is cool because the Hermit isn't traditionally associated with Chiron. It's traditionally associated with Virgo, which you'll see the Hermit here is sitting on a rock in the snow, and they have a patch on their arm, and Virgo, the glyph for Virgo's there. And then they have a backpack, and on the backpack is the glyph for Mercury, a little patch. But on the tree in the background is carved into the tree as a symbol for Chiron, which a lot of people associate Chiron with Virgo. Chiron is a co-ruler for Virgo. The glyph for Chiron is a key, and I often think the key is like the key to the psyche. Opening up a drawer, putting your trauma in it, closing the drawer, locking the drawer with your key, and putting the key in your pocket. So Chiron can speak to the ways in which we compartmentalize our trauma through our intellectual and creative pursuits. But seeing this Hermit here with the Chiron glyph carved onto the tree is really powerful for me. in the adjacent booklet with the Fifth Spirit Tarot, this is what Charlie Claire Burgess writes. They shared this about the Hermit. And also think about this in context to Chiron too. Reflection, soul searching, inner wisdom, solitude, the unorthodox path, following your own truth. The world may call them rebels, but those who walk by their own light are holy. This speaks to me so deeply of my experience with Chiron. The world may call them rebels, but those who walk by their own light are holy. So I'm sharing this because Chiron is in Aries right now, which is conjunct this full moon. Chiron is often referred to as the wounded healer, but in my own practice, I like to expand upon this. Chiron is also the wounded teacher, the wounded mentor, therapist, artist, lover, creative. Chiron speaks to the ways that we process our trauma. And this is through our intellectual pursuits, through our creative pursuits, through our spiritual truths. A quote by Carl Jung, "Only the wounded physician heals." This feels like Chiron, something for us to meditate on here on this full moon. So for me, this full moon is an opportunity for me to reflect on this entire year. Chiron is transiting my north node of fate. And so Chiron moves slowly. What degrees have Chiron been transiting this year? Let's look. I have my ephemeris here. So the beginning of this year, January 2022, Chiron was at the 8th degree of Aries. And Chiron made it up to the 16th degree of Aries this year. So between the 8th degree and 16 degrees of Aries is what Chiron has been traveling. So you can look to those degrees in your chart, in Aries or in any of the other signs, to see how Chiron may be making an aspect to your own natal chart. And then Chiron travels back to the 11th degree of Aries this year. On this full moon is at the 14th degree of Aries. So Chiron travels back to the 11th degrees of Aries, and that will be in December. So yes, this section of our chart, Chiron is hanging out in. So this Aries full moon, again, it offers us this moment in time that we can reflect on the transit that Chiron's been moving through this year. And so for me, during this time of my life, I find myself very fatefully so. It's the north node of fate. I'm on the other side of the country from where I was born, and I'm building a life for myself. I have no family out here on the West Coast, and I'm really coming into myself as an individual. And it's just me and my dog, Biji, who, by the way, has a Chiron in Aries on his midheaven. And things that I'm sensing about Aries, the vast landscape of the Pacific Northwest is very emperor-like to me, is very Aries soul growth-like. I do associate Aries with these vast landscapes where you can look out on the land. And this is like an emperor looks out on the land. So the vast landscape helps to create spaciousness within your own internal landscape. And this has helped me. I go on hikes a lot here. I love hiking up the mountainside, looking out over the gorge here. And there's a sense of that spaciousness allows me to process many of my childhood wounds around abandonment and acceptance. This is Chiron. So there's that childhood wound part of Chiron, while at the same time, this journey of healing and exploration has deepened my craft as a teacher, as an astrologer, as a mentor. So I'm reflecting on that on this full moon too. My offerings are evolving to reflect my own internal journey with Chiron. So I have found, Chiron, if it's the mentor, working with individuals as a mentor is growing for me. Over the past few years, most of my practice has been working with people for astrology or tarot readings, but that's been happening less frequently. Instead, my work is deepening to the point in which I am now primarily a mentor, offering long-term support for those who are desiring depth. And so under the light of this Aries full moon, I am reflecting on my path as a teacher and healer, which feels very Chiron. And I'm feeling into how this part of my identity is growing and expanding. So I would just wanted to share, this is kind of like an announcement, but by the end of this year, I will be opening up my schedule for next year to invite students who wish to work with me even more long term. So my mentorship programs are growing. I'm going to start offering 1 and 2 year mentorship programs. So this is very exciting for me and for the individuals who are longing to explore. So if these Chiron and Aries themes are speaking to you, perhaps this is something that you might be interested in, but I'm celebrating all of my students and each of you on this Chiron Aries full moon. And I hope you take a moment of pause under the light of this beautiful October lunation to reflect on just how far you have come on your journey of healing. And so I did want to share one of my mentorship students with you all, who happened to send me a song that they wrote that was inspired by this Aries Libra polarity. And so we were working together this past week, and this is something that I like to do in the mentorships, is we will meditate on the full moon chart and look to see where it is speaking to the birth chart. And so one of my current students, after our session, sent me an email with a song that they had wrote in reflection on the Aries Libra polarity. And then I asked them if they would like to share it with you all. And this felt like a really cool thing to do on the Aries full moon, to put oneself out there in a bold way. And so Racheli is a queer, non-binary, white, Jewish somatic practitioner, currently practicing and living in San Francisco, California, on occupied Ramaytush-Ohlone land. I asked if they would be willing to record a little introduction to the song, and they said yes. And so let's listen to that now.
Hi, my name is Racheli, and this is a song for the Aries full moon in Libra season. It's a song that explores the tension that sometimes arises when being in relationship with others while being true to oneself. And as a person with a Libra moon and an Aries midheaven, I feel this polarity deeply. It feels habitual and comfortable for me to people please and perform, to shapeshift to be what others want me to be, even if it has meant suppressing my true self. And yet, there is this part within me that is a fighter, that demands to be seen as I am in all of my trans and non-binary glory. Libra and Aries together remind me that being in relationship doesn't require sacrifice of myself. On the contrary, it depends on me being my full, entire, beautiful self. And I'm hoping this song inspires your full, entire, beautiful selves on this magical full moon.
Would you turn away from what you don't
that was a really cool meditation, that song on the Aries Libra polarity. Thank you, Racheli, for sharing that with us all. I'd like to read the lyrics back of the chorus. They really resonate with me and this polarity. Well, I'm done making myself sweeter, trying to make your life easier by pretending I'm not them. And I won't lie to you any longer just so you can still have your daughter and not accept me as I am. I'm feeling the influence of Chiron here too, healing of the childhood wounds. And I know that this will speak to many of you listening as well. So thank you for sharing that with us. And yeah, we have more to explore on this episode. I wanted to touch base about Mars and Gemini, and then we have a conversation with Brandon Alter and Angel Lopez. So yeah, Mars and Gemini, both the Aries Full Moon and Chiron and Aries are ruled by Mars. They're answering to Mars. So we can deepen our understanding of this lunation by looking to Mars in our own birth chart, but also looking to Mars in the sky, in the heavens right now. So Mars is in Gemini, and this is a long transit. 7 months Mars is in Gemini because Mars will station retrograde at the end of this month, October. So August 20th, 2022 to March 25th of 2023, Mars is in Gemini. And so, do you find yourself at a crossroads? Gemini can be the crossroads. Do you find yourself scattered in your approach? Do you feel yourself being torn in opposing directions? I know for me tonight, this is, I'm recording this the day before the actual full moon, but Saturday is also the full moon night going into Sunday. And I accidentally overbooked myself. I have 2 dinners that I'm supposed to go to tonight, and I want to go to both of them. So I'm splitting my time, and I'm going to spend like an hour or 2 at one place and an hour or 2 at the other place. And I was just kind of reflecting on, how this feels like Mars and Gemini to me. So this Aries full moon does have that quality of being torn or split in 2 different directions, maybe scattered in the approach. So now is the time to explore flexibility of movement, social adaptivity. The shadow and the light is Gemini. So Mars directing your ambition and physical vitality towards Gemini theme. So directing your ambition, your physical vitality towards writing, towards communication, towards meditation, fluid movement. This helps to build bridges between duality. And so seek the perspective of another person on this full moon. Even though Mars and Aries, it is the individual, Mars and Gemini says, well, let's have a conversation about it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a peaceful, balanced way like Libra. Gemini is not as interested in peace as it is interested in finding the truth of the matter. So asking questions, following your cosmic cookie crumb trail of curiosity, connecting with long lost soul twins or siblings, talking it out with a therapist or a mentor. These are all helpful with Gemini. Feels like clearing out stagnant energy too. Mars wants to clear things out, and Gemini is the lungs, the shoulders, the arms, and the hands. So again, Mars is in Gemini. This is carrying us through the remainder of 2022 and into the first few months of 2023. Mars entered Gemini August 20th. Mars stations retrograde on October 29th. Mars stations direct on January 12th at the beginning of 2023. And then Mars will not enter Cancer until March 25th. So there is an extra focus of energy towards Gemini during this 7-month Mars retrograde period. And I find it quite fascinating considering that 2022 is our collective lovers year. So I invited you to place your lovers card out as well. And so the lovers teaches us a lot. The lovers teaches us vulnerability to drop out of our head and into our hearts. The lovers encourages harmonious relationships through vulnerability and communication. So have you been experiencing these things this year in 2022? I also think that the lovers is about androgyny, proposing a marriage of divine androgyny, the coming together of opposition within the self and also outside of the self too. So again, place your Emperor card out for the Aries Full Moon. This is Aries card, and the Lover's card in honor of Mars and Gemini. Maybe the Hermit for Chiron, or the Nine of Wands. And if you feel called, you could start to really use this full moon and this Mars and Gemini transit to reflect on 2022 through the lens of the Lovers. Again, 2022 is our collective Lovers year. You add up the digits of 2022 and you get 6, which is the Lovers. So I'm putting a call out to the community. This feels very Mars and Gemini too. If you have any profound connections or stories or synchronicities with the Lovers in 2022 and you feel called, please reach out to me through email letting me know. There's a link in the show notes for that. And then come the Gemini full moon, which will be 2 full moons from now. This is December 7th, 2022. We'll reconvene and share a couple of the community stories about the Lovers year. So I look forward to connecting and playing with you in this Gemini way. Full moon blessings to you. And at this time, speaking of lovers, we're going to connect to Brandon Alter and Angel Lopez, who are the host of the podcast, The Spiritual Gayz. I've had them on the show a few times, so they don't need too much of an introduction, but they're both incredible astrologers, mystics, tarot practitioners that host a podcast. And in our conversation, I had shared this earlier in this podcast episode that Brandon uses the phrase, living the rainbow of pain. So after I have conversations with people, I listen back to the conversation to edit it a bit, and it helps me meditate on the full or the new moon. And recently I've enjoyed picking out a line from the conversation for the title of the episode. And so the line that stuck out to me the most was a phrase that Brandon said, which was living the rainbow of pain when talking about Chiron. And I didn't actually hear Brandon say this during our conversation, but if I had, I would have asked them to elaborate on it more. And so I texted Brandon and I asked if they would be willing to tell us a little bit about this phrase that they used, living the rainbow of pain. I think it's such a beautiful phrase. And I also told Brandon it could be a title to a book that they may write at some point. And this is what Brandon wrote back in response to this phrase, living the rainbow of pain. Oh, my goddess, I love you so much. I guess I would just elaborate to say that pain is a language and has many different colors and flavors and textures. And because as a culture, we are so adverse to experiencing pain, we think that pain is just one thing. And if this first sojourn into grief has taught me anything, it's that pain has so many complexities, and I am just beginning to explore all of that. To me, living the rainbow of pain means giving yourself permission to experience everything that's coming up that might be agonizing, and then noticing how it connects us to the spectrum of joy and sorrow through the raw vitality of being alive. The raw vitality of being alive. I mean, this is so Aries, and the rainbow of pain is so Chiron. I'm feeling Brandon's Chiron and Gemini with this, having a way with words and describing the pain. And I also think it's really cool because I've heard Chiron described as the rainbow bridge between the inner and outer planets. And in this moment, I'm also thinking about how important Chiron is to the LGBTQ community and thinking about the symbol of the rainbow. So keep all of this in mind as we listen to this conversation with the incredible Brandon Alter and Angel Lopez, also known as the Spiritual Gayz. Well, Hello. We have our dear friends back on the podcast. Brandon Alter and Angel Lopez, also known as the Spiritual Gayz. Welcome back to Cosmic Cousins.
The one and only.
Yes.
Never to be duplicated, although they've tried on Instagram.
Many a time.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for having us.
We're so excited to be
The imposters? Here. Is that what we're talking about?
Honey, those imposters. Yeah. Like the cockroaches of the metaverse.
Oh.
I've been connecting this to Scorpio South Node. Yeah, I have. I think because I have a Scorpio midheaven. So my account's just completely on private now. I can't even deal with it.
We don't deal with it. We just kind of like plug our ears and cover our eyes and just go like, well, it's going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we did for a while there, but it just started to feel like tiresome to engage in it all, you know?
Yeah. I couldn't. So I'm like, I'm private now and I don't need to build my audience through Instagram at this moment in time and just trusting in the process.
Totally.
Yes, get it, girl.
You know?
Yeah.
So we're gathering for the Aries Full Moon today.
Yes, we are.
And I want to say you maybe were on the Aries Full Moon episode like back in maybe like 2018 or 2019. I know that you came on for Libra season because I always am connecting the two of you to Libran energy just because of your collaboration together.
And because of our expensive taste in candles.
That and your fashion. I was like scrolling through your Instagram today and just looking at all the outfits and feeling inspired.
Oh, that's sweet.
Both of you, which makes me, I want to start with Angel, your new blonde ambition era.
Hey.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And are you connecting this to any astrological transit that you're moving through?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I mean, I guess I could relate it on some level to the North Node moving through Taurus, through that ascendant first house space for me.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was like an inspiration that came partially from Brandon, who was like, "Oh, that looked really good on you," and I wasn't entirely sold. I had like done my hair multiple colors way back in my early 20s, and you know, it was never professionally done. It was like, you know, like me and like 6 lesbians like in a kitchen in the Castro, you know, like it wasn't like, you know, like anything well done. But yeah, I just kind of got excited and inspired, and I think ultimately it came down to this like need to start to see myself a little differently, you know, to like just try and change the way I was relating to myself on certain levels. And I always find that if you can look at yourself in the mirror and see yourself differently, it's a trigger, right? Like it helps to engage that process. So, and it really has. Like I will still like just be like brushing my teeth and look up in the mirror and be like, oh my God, like that's me. So it's been helpful. It's like it given me a bit more of like a playful, I think like creative approach to things.
Yeah. And just to clarify for those listening, the blonde ambition era is Angel dyed their hair blonde. If you didn't pick up on that yet, which is no to your queen, Madonna, right? Didn't she have like a blonde ambition tour?
Yeah.
Yes.
She did.
This is interesting. This connection to the head. We're gathering for the Aries full moon. So Taurus North nodes transiting through your first house is what I'm hearing you connect this to. But also Aries in the head, the relationship to the hair. I just got a haircut last week too. And I do like, I feel a sense of freshness whenever I get a haircut. And I was like, ooh, I want to go like hang out with this person now. Like it does make you more like forward facing, I think. What do you think the relationship is to the head for Aries?
Well, I think there is something to that whole, I guess, like just being really present to the world. I mean, that's like part of the high vibe expression of Aries, right? To like just be really present and in the moment. And I feel like, you know, there's a big part of that that's in the head, you know, the senses, all of that like, I don't know, I'm like physically wanting to just like jet my head around just thinking about that and embodying it, you know, there is just that like real presence of sense that comes with Aries for me and being an Aries. And so I think, there's something to just, like wanting to even like decorate that part of myself, because it's so active in who I am. And I always think of like babies, right? Like, when babies like are finally able to like hold their head up on their own, I think it's like around, I don't know, is it like 6 months or something where usually where babies can start to do that? Then it's like, they're really able to like engage with what they want, like where their eyes want to go and everything. And there's obviously such a like childlike, baby-like sensibility that is also in alignment with Aries.
I know. I kind of forget that side of Aries sometime. I feel like I can typecast Aries in a certain way, but it is fun to think about Aries as the baby. I've been babysitting for my god nephew, who, by the way, has the same sun moon rising as me, which is the first person I've ever met that shares that with me. And they gave him the middle name Jeffrey in honor of that. Aww. And he lives in Portland. And so we're on a schedule where I'm babysitting him every other Monday. So I'm getting to know him. He's only 8 months old, but he is now starting to be able to, he can't stand up on his own, but he can use the coffee table and put his hands on the coffee table and stand up, and just like seeing the way that he looks around the room, the way that you're talking about, and moves his head and is like really proud of himself, and we clap for him and that sort of thing. This is interesting to think about this as an Aries expression of, even like celebrating the ability to do things on our own. And do either of you feel seen in that as, both of you are Aries stelliums, which maybe we'll start there too. Could you share with us what placements the both of you have in Aries?
So my Aries placements are, I'm an Aries rising with Mars and Venus conjunct in Aries. And I also have Black Moon Lilith and Eris in Aries.
Saucy.
It's a very saucy first house, which is why, as Angel was talking about his connection with Aries in the head, I was just thinking about like rams and how they headbutt. And that's how I connect. I think it's because I'm Aries rising and Angel's Aries sun. But Angel will tell you, like, sometimes like I will like push my head into his like way too forcefully, and I'm not even aware I'm doing it. Because I can just be a little bit of a ram sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, that's facts. My Aries is Aries Sun, Mercury, Venus, South Node, Eris, all in the 12th house.
Oh, I have to ask this: who do you think is more Aries? Because that's a lot of Aries that you both have.
No, I know. I think we are both equally Aries, just in the different aspects of Aries. Like, I think Angel has the childlike whimsy and wonder. I think he has like the presence of Aries, and I have like the aggression and the like act before I look, and like more of that Aries quality.
Anger, Jeff. So much anger. He's so angry.
Yeah.
But I'm also quick to get over it, which is very Aries, right? Like, I'm quick to get mad, and then I'm also quick to be like, and I'm over it. I don't care anymore.
Yeah. What's that making me think of when I'm babysitting too? Like, we just ride the emotional waves of like 1 second we're laughing, the next second we're screaming, and it just is continually changing. I was like, they start screaming and I walk him over to the window and we look out the window and he's like happy again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's me living my life.
Very present to what's right in front of you.
How long are these babysitting sessions? Like, how many hours are you responsible for?
2 to 3 hours. It's like,
it's a long 2 to 3 hours. I bet.
Once he starts crying, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's good medicine for me, I think. So I'm happy to have talked about your ambition era. I'm thinking about the ambition as a word for Aries too, which is interesting. I wanted to check in with you with that. And Brandon, I also know that you've been on a deep journey with what that you're calling your grief vacation, or you've taken a grief vacation with the recent passing of your mother.
It's an ongoing vacation wherever I am. It's almost like I'm inhabiting two worlds at the same time, because I'm here, like I'm engaging with you, I'm like still living in the same house. I'm taking care of Noche. I'm seeing some clients. And simultaneously, it's like I'm in this like totally other spiritual and emotional landscape that everything's getting processed through. It's almost like I got split in half and now there's two of me and they have to like interface with each other. It's a very strange thing. It's almost like virtual reality. Like when you're like, you know, like you're playing a game. So like there's like your avatar somewhere. I'm not a gamer, so I'm probably gonna do a terrible job of explaining this. But then you're also like in your house, like playing the game. Like there's two of you that are interfacing with each other. That's kind of been my experience of grief.
Yeah. That's a really fascinating way to put it. And it's making me think of like, it's deepening my understanding of like when people say like the veil's thin and you have like contact to the other world, like that's kind of what I'm hearing you say a bit, is that you're so deep in this process of the spiritual world that it almost feels like you're in two different worlds. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Except for me, it's not so much that, and maybe this is the spirit world, but it's like, it feels like I'm in my own inner world. And I know my inner world does connect to the spirit world at some point, but it's more like, look, I'm a Capricorn moon. So like, I'm not used to crying every day. I'm not used to like being so emotionally accessible. I'm not used to like not knowing when I'm going to be emotionally solvent or not. And since my mom's passed away, like I'm a completely different, highly sensitive creature. And so I'm attuned to my inner landscape in a way that I've never had to be before. And that does connect me to something spiritually. But at this moment, because I'm still my mom passed away not even 4 months ago. So it's still pretty fresh. Like I feel like I'm engaging with the world through a veil, because most of my attention is on my inner life. And so everything I do is reaching out, which is very opposite from how like my Aries rising Capricorn moon self is used to engaging.
Well, there's something here that I always connect to Aries, which is when we're talking about the face and the presence of being with something, it does feel like you're fully going in and being present with this experience of your grief. I mean, to even like take a vacation with your grief. I think that you went out to the desert, and I think I remember reading, because you've been sharing openly with us in the community about your process, which is so incredible and so brave that you've been willing to share with us. And this to me is a reflection of Aries too, is that bravery and also using your own experience as a way to help other people and to teach other people, guide other people. I do think of Aries as that teacher who's on their own journey, and going to the desert and actually like being with the grief. I mean, this is a solo journey that you've been on.
It is.
What inspired that? Is that something that maybe a teacher shared with you, or was it intuitive?
No, my therapist was like, you should go on a retreat. He was like, I remember when I broke up with my boyfriend in many years, like I like got a cabin in the woods and I just spent a month like cooking meals and like chatting with the townspeople and like finding my way back towards myself. And I was like, that sounds like a really good idea. But because I'm such a like fucking Aries rising, and so also this is like my Saturn and Scorpio in the 8th house, like I just like go hard or go home. I was like, okay, I'm going to book the cabin like in deep pioneer town where I won't see anybody. Like I didn't even have cell service. And my romantic idea of this grief vacation was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I'm going to like be with myself and able to process and integrate and read books. And then I got there and I was like, what the fuck did I do to myself? Like no distraction, forced to face myself, like just me and that like empty blue desert sky for days and days and days. It was really hard and really uncomfortable. And it taught me how to soften. And it also taught me that like I am not the same as I was. Because at the end of the day, I'm an Aquarius with an Aquarius, you know, a lot of planets in Aquarius, Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury, and I'm good on my own. So like Brandon in 2019 could have gone out to the desert for like a month and had no issues. But I'm not that same Brandon. I'm broken. I'm fragile. I'm sensitive. I'm needing people and connection and comfort. And so I actually came home early. I was supposed to be out there for like 15 days, and around like day 10 or 11, I was just like, nope, I've had enough. I pulled cards on it. You're in love with this. So I was like, all right, I'm feeling like maybe I should go home. So tarot, what am I looking at if I stay through the end of the trip? And it was the 5 of Pentacles. And I was like, what am I looking at if I go home early? And it was the Sun. And I was like, okay, this seems very clear. Like, I'm going to pack up and go home.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I was very happy.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that you're using tools like tarot during this process. And I wanted to check in about that and just see if you like how your practices have shifted, if they're supporting you, or if you need space from astrology or tarot during this time.
You know, it's interesting. Like when I was down, so my mom passed away of cancer. She was fighting it valiantly for 7 years, and she had like really beautiful, clear spots and then some really challenging battle moments. And this year was just like kind of a constant battle. And so the last 2 months of her life, she was in the hospital down in San Diego where I grew up, and I was there. I was just like there in San Diego, visiting her every day, taking care of her dog, and often Noche. And so in that, I was pulling cards every day. Like I needed everything I could possibly get, you know, like I would get to the hospital early. I would do Qigong in the parking lot. I would pull my cards. Like I'd spread them out on like the like dashboard of my car, and I would like pull my cards, and I'd like just, you know, like walk into the hospital and just like face the day. And it was so valuable. And then pretty much as soon as my mom passed, I did not pull cards for weeks. I was just like, I can't, like, I don't care. I don't need, like, I was just, and then only recently has it come back. And when I was in the desert, I was pulling them every day because again, I think like, I don't know. I know, you know, this, there are periods of your life where you want more divine input and information. And then there are periods of your life where you're like, just leave me the fuck alone. Like I can't handle all of it.
Yeah.
So that's
absolutely.
Yeah.
And just kind of trusting in the process of knowing which healing tools you need at which times too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I've been like trying to get to the bottom of is that this is a temperance year for me. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely teaching me a different face of temperance. Like I did not expect my temperance year to be so painful.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to share a little bit about my experience of temperance if you feel open to it.
Please.
Well, we know that it follows the death card. So there is a connection to the energy of death, release, transformation, and temperance. For me, it's been an experience of actually connecting to the spirit world through nature. So I often think of like the angel that we see that's here on earth, and the connection to the water, 1 foot on land, 1 foot on water, the irises there, which irises are a flower of mediumship. My experience of moving through temperance has I have felt in moments where I feel my grandmother when a butterfly passes by. Like when nature's communicating to you, which this isn't necessarily like a traditional way of connecting to temperance, but it has been my experience of it when I dedicate a week of my life to it, or during my temperance years. And the need for not drinking alcohol or relying on substances feels really important during temperance too, so that we can be present. You know, there is a quietness to it. You know, I don't think of temperance and think about listening to a lot of media. It feels like a very, almost like a holy energy, but the temple is nature that's here to support us. That's been my personal connection to it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have experienced a lot of that, including feeling my mom's presence in butterflies, very specific moments. Yeah. So that's very interesting.
Well, a deep bow to you and all that you're sharing and moving through, and we're all sending you a lot of love.
I appreciate it. I feel it.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant, but it is nice in a strange way to feel so fragile and feel open to receiving from the community. And I kind of feel like this soft, humble, little bird with a broken wing. And there's something very tender about it, and it's helping me be tender with myself in ways that I've never been able to be tender with myself. So yeah.
I'm thinking about just the wings on the temperance angel too when you're saying that.
Totally.
Yeah. And
those big wings.
This full moon is conjunct Chiron in Aries, which there's a lot in what we're talking about that we can feel in Chiron. So Chiron has been in Aries for a few years now. So I'd imagine both of you have been on some sort of journey with Chiron. And, you know, Chiron is, I think of Chiron as the teacher in our chart, and is connected to, a lot of times Chiron transits are connected to the mother. The story of Chiron is Chiron was abandoned by the mother and then channeled their grief of abandonment into their studies and into their teachings and becomes the teacher. So everything that you're talking about, just like you going on your grief vacation, is then part of your teachings. Everything that you're learning right now becomes, it's the wound, but it's also the healing. And I'm interested in that. I'm curious how either of you have been working with Chiron. And if you do, I know that it's, you know, it's a planetoid or a dwarf planet. And Chiron on this full moon, I have the full moon chart here. Chiron is currently at the 14th degree of Aries, and this full moon is at the 16th degree of Aries. And so, Angel, you've already had Chiron transit the sun in your chart, and it's just hitting up all your Aries placements, and you'll be leading up to your Chiron return, which is Chiron at the 0 degree of Taurus, but all of this is in the 12th house. So in many ways, I'd imagine that you've been on a personal journey with Chiron. Have you been paying attention to this planetoid?
Yeah, I definitely have. I have a real soft spot for Chiron. It was like one of those things that as I was studying astrology and you know, when I was studying astrology like 20 something years ago, it was like Chiron wasn't as talked about. It still felt like a little bit like on, you know, the fringe of it. So it was like one of those things that it was like, oh, and there's that too, if you want to learn about that. And it was like definitely the one that I just like grasped onto. And I've been really feeling it, particularly, you know, around that sun conjunction. I feel like I have been such a student of my identity and really like learning about, I think what's underneath everything that has helped form my identity. And, I mean, it's kind of on the nose to have like literal feelings of abandonment that came from my childhood. But that's like one aspect of something that I had really had to learn about myself, that like a lot of what was like feeding the way I was expressing myself in the world were these like underlying childhood hurts, you know, of abandonment and loneliness. And then I was just like acting out from those places still. And so I think I've been really working hard over the last couple of years to fully get in touch with my queer identity, my Latin identity, just my sexual gender identity expression, just all of these things for myself, like just trying to really understand, you know, and question for myself all of the things so that I can be like, okay, no, that makes sense for me. That doesn't make sense for me. And just trying to get like a clear understanding, because being in the 12th house too, it's like, I never know when these things are going to surface or what's mine and what's just someone else's that I've picked up along the way. And so it's been like really valuable for me to try and like, you know, excavate everything that has created who I am. And I'm still going through that. Like, that's like what my therapist hears me talk about every week at the moment. It's just like, so who am I? Like, still figuring that out.
I mean, this is such an Aries question though. Like, who am I?
Yeah.
What's my identity? So all these identities that you're connecting us to, and then this Chiron transit is, we all might be experiencing some sort of wound around our individuality and our identity at this time. I like that you're bringing up the therapist too, because I often connect Chiron to, it could be the therapist in our chart. It could be the mentor, the teacher, the healer. And so it does feel like a good use of energy to have a therapist that's helping you through this process. I also think of like even just like reading books and things like that. Like I have a stack of books here with me all about healing trauma that I've just been reconnecting with when I've been meditating on this full moon coming up. So yeah, it's the full moon in Aries, but it might not feel like traditional Aries energy because it's for hanging out right there with our wounds, with our trauma, with our abandonment. And for those who have a lot of Aries energy, you've been likely getting really in touch with these parts of yourself over the past few years.
Yeah, it feels like it's like been forcing people to get more sensitive to themselves. And Aries on its own is maybe not the most, like, I guess I would say like vulnerable and internally sensitive, like they're sensitive if you like poke their ego, but they're not so sensitive to themselves, there's, so I feel like, this combination of Chiron with the Aries is this like need to self-examine in a way that maybe isn't comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because it's cardinal fire, Aries energy wants to like go out into the world. And Chiron asks us to like go into ourselves. It's kind of like what I was talking about in terms of this like dichotomy, like of my own inner grief awareness. And I connect Chiron to grief as well and to like our most tender places. And I've even been like exploring the idea of like Chiron in the natal chart as how you might deal with grief or trauma, not just like the sort of grief and trauma that you're going to be, coming up with. So I have Chiron in Gemini. So obviously I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to write
Here
about
we are.
it. You're going to know about it.
Yeah.
But I do think that it is good for Aries people with whatever Aries placements you have to not just focus on what you're doing out in the world, but to turn around and look at why you're wanting to do that out in the world. And this full moon might give you a sense of that. And I think the Venus opposition is really interesting too, because you've got basically Venus conjunct the sun and then Chiron conjunct the moon. And so I'm also like curious about like what people have you like pulled in to trigger those tenderest spots, right? So that you can see it for the first time. Because sometimes like, it's like when you have all those little cuts on your hand and then you like make a salad dressing with lemon and you're like, oh God, I had no idea. Like I had all these cuts. So it's like, there's something about like that Venus who might like show you where you're hurt when you didn't realize it until somebody goes and like pokes you and you go like, oh wow, I'm actually like bleeding there. Like, please don't poke me there. So I think it'll be, when we were looking at this full moon in our like Astro Club and breaking it down, I just said like, I think this one's going to hurt everybody. I think this one's going to hurt. And that's not bad. Like I'm somebody who is like living the rainbow of pain and it's not, and I'm still alive. I'm not dead from it. It hurts, but there's something beautiful too.
So this like gorgeous Venusian salad that we can eat, but it's painful to
make it. Sure. Yeah, totally.
I love that. Yeah. You said your Astro Club. What did you call it?
Astro Club. Yeah. So we do like a monthly Astro Club where we like break down the transits and like the lunations of like the coming season. So it's like Libra season Astro Club or Scorpio season Astro Club. So it's useful for us and for our community because we're just kind of like taking a peek into like what's to come.
Yeah. That's amazing that you offer that. If anyone listening would be interested in it, what would be the best way for them to get in contact?
Oh my goddess. Just go to our website, the Spiritual Gayz, GAYZ.com, and it's under webinars, and we do it every month. And it's live if you want to join us live. Then we also send out the recording, and people come with their charts. And so we help people kind of like plug in like where the lunations or the transits are happening. And it's just a great place to learn astrology and just like hang out with us.
Yeah. And just be with a bunch of people who want to talk astrology.
Gazers, if you will.
Gazers, wheelers.
Yeah.
You know who you are.
So I have North Node in Aries, and so Chiron's just sitting on my North Node right now.
Ooh,
and I've definitely been feeling that just living in a new city, where I'm completely on my own now, and I've been really processing that. I I don't live with my, like, close to my family at all anymore, and that this is a conscious choice for the evolution of my life. But it's bringing up a lot, a lot of pain from the past. And but I'm also stepping into a role as being a mentor and a teacher. Most of my work has shifted from doing group work to working one-on-one with people. And I do think that for all three of us, since we're all experiencing these Chiron transits with our Aries, we're stepping into healership and teacher and mentor roles more at this time, but we're also likely going through some like deep wounds too. And I loved hearing you say that Chiron in our chart isn't just where the trauma is, but how we might deal with that trauma. And so you were mentioning that you have a Chiron and Gemini in your chart. And so that would be, kind of like what we're doing right now, having a conversation about these things, talking it out, maybe writing and journaling.
For sure. Yeah.
And so it's reminding me that this full moon, we can always look on the full moon to the ruling planet is in Mars, or is in Gemini. Mars is in Gemini for this full moon. So Mars is in Gemini for 7 months. And I heard the two of you talk about this on your podcast, and you gave a really nice metaphor for it that involved like hiking and dropping a key somewhere and going back for the key. Do you want to share with everyone about that metaphor?
Yeah. I mean, this is just how we kind of explain any planet's retrograde phase. Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically, just like imagine that you go on a hike. So you're like going on a hike and you get maybe like a mile in and you at some point have dropped your car keys. You don't know when and where, but you've dropped your car keys. So at a mile in, you realize, oh shit, I have dropped my car keys. I am hiking in the woods. I should probably not go any further. I should probably turn around and try to find my car keys so that I can get the hell out of here at the end of the hike. So when you decide to turn around, when you realize you've dropped something, that's the stationing retrograde. Mm-hmm. Now, if we wanted to get more specific, we could say that whole first mile that you walked was the shadow, because you didn't know you were going to have to walk back over it, but it turns out you are. So now you're walking back. This is the retrograde. You're looking for your keys. And when you find your keys and you go, oh, thank God, here are my keys. And you pick them up and you decide I can go forwards again. That is stationing direct. But now you're like a mile back in the hike. So then when you traverse that same mile that you've now will have walked over a third time, right? You did it first, then you went back and now you're going forwards again. That's the shadow for the last time. And then finally you get to that place where you realized this is where I realized I lost my keys, but I'm going to keep hiking now because I have my keys. And that's when we finally get into new territory. So
Mars clears the shadow.
Mars clears that shadow, honey. But that's not going to be for a long time.
I have the dates here, so maybe we'll just go back over them and use your metaphor as an example. So Mars entered Gemini on August 20th. So that's when we begin the hike.
Yeah, we're like, let's go on a hike in the Gemini woods.
Maybe with a friend or maybe with our shadow.
Or a podcast.
Right.
Yes. So August 20th, this is like right at the start of Virgo season, essentially like the last final days of Leo season. And then Mars enters its shadow on September 4th.
Okay. So that's essentially like when you drop your keys.
Okay.
You don't know you've dropped your keys, but that's when you drop your keys because you're going to have to go back there.
Yeah. But with the power of astrology, we know ahead of time that we dropped our keys. We get the foresight.
That's when you drop something that you need.
And I like that we're using keys as an example because Chiron's connected to keys, even though we're talking about Mars. But I just feel Chiron so present with us. And then Mars stations retrograde on October 29th.
So that's your, oh shit. You're like hiking and you feel in your pockets and you go, I do not have my car keys. That's when you realize you dropped your keys.
Got to turn around.
Turn it around. Baby.
No choice in the matter. So January 12th. So throughout all of November and December, we're hiking back. And then January 12th, Mars stations direct.
And we find our keys. And then we thank the goddess that they are on the trail and we can see them clearly.
And then Mars is still in Gemini. Now we're going direct and Mars clears its shadow on March 17th. And it's not until March 25th that Mars enters Cancer.
Wow. Yeah.
So 7 months. We get really intimate with this Gemini energy. And then I guess you could also add in there too, if you have anything in Gemini, like Brandon, you have Chiron in Gemini, you could see if Mars is transiting that point for you throughout this time.
Totally.
So you could add in some additional dates along the way. I love the way that you describe that on the podcast, that metaphor of the retrograde. And I've shared it a few times with people, and I'm making sure to say the spiritual gaze. This is their way of working with retrograde. It's brilliant.
It's just helpful to visualize it, because it can seem a little nebulous when you're just like thinking about planets in space and they're not actually moving backwards, but they look like they're moving backwards. And
especially when you introduce the whole shadow phase portion of it, because most people just talk about the retrograde, though I do feel like the shadow is starting to become a greater part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
what are the kids calling it? It's retro shade.
Retro shade. Yes, the children. But what I like about this metaphor for the retrograde is that instead of it seeming like punishing or like a problem, you're going back to get something that you need. So it's actually benefic. It's generous that you get to retrace your steps and pick up that thing that you lost, that you need, so that you can then go forwards in a better way.
And Angel's reminding me right now, just the way you're stretching, I want to stretch like that too. Gemini is connected to the lungs, to the shoulders, to the arms, to the hands, and Mars is movement too. So actually moving this part of the body, I feel things stuck in my lungs right now, and I feel like I'm utilizing this Mars and Gemini transit to start to clear things out of the lungs. Lungs are connected to grief. Breath work could be really helpful at this time. How are you sensing Mars and Gemini, and how might that shift the way that we're interacting with this Aries full moon and also the rest of this year and into 2023?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's nice to kind of like frame this full moon as answering to that Mars and Gemini. Like it's our first full taste of it. And through the lens of like, what wounds are we working with? Angel and I have been talking a lot about like Mars and Gemini is like, you got to walk two roads and you got to do it at the same time. So it's the inner road and the outer road. It's, following two projects, because by starting a new project, it gives you the energy you need to finish the old project. It's exploring things from a different point of view. So I also think that like part of my gift of Chiron and Gemini is that I'm able to understand not just the wounding I've experienced, but the perspective of those that have done the wounding on me. Like I'm able to understand like some of my biggest adversaries. Even if I struggle to forgive them, I'm able to understand their perspective, their story, because that's Gemini. There's always going to be at least two stories. And so I think with Aries, it's like, what are the stories about your own identity? What's the old story that's no longer valuable? Not that it wasn't true at the time. I mean, that's the thing about authenticity and identity that Angel and I always talk about. It's like, it's not a fixed point. And for me personally, like having Chiron moving through my first house and touching my Mars and touching my Venus, it's eradicated. It's crumbled so much of what I've held to as true about myself. And so I think for everyone with this full moon, especially answering to that Mars and Gemini, like it's Aries having to like take action through thought, which is something we Aries don't really like to do. Like we just want to act and then we'll think about it later. But we're being asked to like really think about things and really explore it and think about different points of view. And I think that's useful, especially in our current times, which are so polarized and so like me versus you or us versus them. And it's an invitation into exploring, where am I wrong? Where am I not understanding the other side?
Yeah. And yeah, I'm really connecting to thoughts and our relationship to how our thoughts guide our intentions. If we think of, like you were saying, Mars being, taking action, motivation, and in Gemini, it connects that guttural Aries, Mars impulse to our mind, to our thoughts in Gemini. And I think that's where the Chiron that we've been talking about, that ever-present feeling of Chiron comes into play, to what I was kind of talking about earlier of like, how starting to really try and fully excavate like how my wounds have created my thoughts and then have then fed my actions. You know, I feel like there's something to that with this long Mars in Gemini of really like the relationship of our minds, our thoughts, our ideas, and how they guide, you know, the actions that we take, and really having to use that retrograde time to examine these things, you know, to really slow down and understand, okay, why do I think like that? You know, and why do I think about myself that way? And then therefore make this choice, you know, or make that move. I feel like it's a real opportunity to get some greater awareness of that inside voice and where it came from and what it's guiding us to do. And if it's really our friend or more of a foe. Mm. And how to make it a better friend to us, you know? Because I find for myself, like I will get into these just zones of like where my brain is just like, oh yeah, and I have to do this and I'm going to do that and I need to call so-and-so. And I know not everyone is that way, which was like a huge like brain explosion for me. I was like, wait, you don't have a voice in your head? So I know not everyone acts that way. There are some Mercuries out there who don't live in that world. But I think a lot of people do. And I think it's about understanding why that voice is going on and why it chooses sometimes to interpret things in certain ways, you know, like the truth is ultimately really coming from like our interpretation of reality, right? So to me, it's like, why am I choosing to interpret things from this perspective, you know, and recognizing that maybe that's a negative perspective that was born out of mommy didn't love me.
Yeah. More Chiron there.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
That. Yeah.
And can I just offer that?
Yeah.
Something I've been working with, and if this feels true for you, accept it. And if it doesn't, feel free to disregard it. But I don't think our true self would ever talk to ourselves critically in any way. So I think when an inner voice does show up negatively, it's actually not you. And that's important to understand. Like it's a stowaway, you know, it's a stowaway from society or culture or family or upbringing or something you saw on TV when you were 7 years old. But like your true self would only love you and support you and encourage you. And that is just, to me, that's very comforting to agree to is true. So I also can have negative self-talk, but I try really hard to be like, well, that ain't me. I don't know who you are, but you're not me. And I'm not going to give you energy and attention as best I can. Because even if I can't always hear the true voice within, I know it's not a voice that would try to tear me down.
And I think that this is important when we're working with Gemini energy too. And I just keep coming back to this image of you saying like existing in two places at once and connecting that to Gemini and just this kind of duality within the self, which a lot of the more modern tarot cards have depicted the Lover's card in this sort of way, like looking at a reflection of the self. And we are here, 2022 is our collective Lover's year. So I am intrigued by that too, of just having Mars and Gemini close out this year and our collective Lover's year. Any thoughts on this Lover's year that we've been experiencing?
Well, what comes to mind when you're talking about that and just everything we've been talking about, it feels almost like the duality is like the child and the present adult self, you know, and really the relationship that they have with each other.
Yeah, it makes me think of the Six of Swords, which was the card that we pulled for our like collective spread. And I really have been working with the idea that like the boatman is spirit and the little naked butt baby on the left is your inner child and the cloaked figure is your current wounded self. And you're taking this adventure together. And I think that's a useful way to explore the Lovers is like, right, how are we partnering with ourselves? And based on the parts of ourselves we're partnering with, what choices are we making? I've had to unmake a lot of choices this year, which is very interesting. That, because to me, lovers is very much about like choice too, like the individuation, you know? And so by circumstance, and then also by a slightly less robust capacity, like I'm not as resourced as I once was, I've had to unchoose a lot of things and just go, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
Well, I think that's a really great way of looking at the Mars and Gemini retrograde, because, you know, Mars Aries energy is like kind of act now, question later. But we all know that, like, you know, Gemini is just like the god of question, you know, like, but why? But why is sky red, you know, blue? Like, why is that, you know, green? You know, like there's just that whole questioning process that comes with it. And I feel like you can really like take that time to like pause and be like, why did I decide to like that person and be their friend? You know, like where was that coming from, or what have you? Why did I decide to move here? You know, like you can really get into underneath that process a little more, which then becomes with like having to unchoose some of those things that you did choose initially.
Yeah, that's like the secret shadow gift of the Gemini, which is that like they can be really flaky, which is that they've agreed to something and then they just unchoose it, which is actually in some ways like self-care. But it's a secret shadow gift, because if you're on the receiving end of that, you're like, we had lunch plans. Where are you?
Yeah.
Friends.
I'm coming back to this metaphor of hiking. And so I'm thinking the hike is like, it's the twins that are going on this hike together. And then they realize that they lost their keys. And how do we find a union between the twins? Because one twin's like, maybe we go this way. The other one's like, no, we came from that way. And it almost feels like there could be like a split happening. But positive, useful ways of this energy is, well, maybe we just have a nice conversation on the way back. And so whether that's like you're in traditional talk therapy, or you're reading a book that's for self-help, or you're in a journaling practice. I mean, Gemini loves having all of these kind of tools at their disposal, but I'm trying to picture this retrograde, the hike back to the keys, as like a pleasant conversation that you're having with a person, not beating yourself up for dropping the keys, which, you know, you might do. Be like, I'm such an idiot. But like, no, it's okay. We can enjoy each other's company as we go back for this.
And you have two sets of eyes to help you see. So even if we're not walking two roads simultaneously, we can be looking at two different parts of the road.
Yeah. And I feel like, you can be like noticing things that maybe you didn't before, you know, you're like, oh, look at that lookout point over there. And it's like, all right, well, let's get the keys first. But then when we're on our way back up, we'll stop at that lookout point.
But that is the thing.
We'll do those things.
Yeah, about hiking is that the trail always looks different on the way back than it does on the way wherever it is that you're going. Yeah.
And it is nice to hike with a friend. I'm even feeling like this conversation that we're having for the Aries full moon is a very Mars and Gemini moment for us to be exploring all of these themes and to talk it out. And I've noticed, actually, it was when Mars entered Gemini, which again was around August 20th, that's when I decided I scheduled people to come on the podcast for each new and full moon, was right around that time. And I actually, earlier this year, I was not in a place where I felt open to interviewing or having conversations with a lot of people. I only had a few different people on the show earlier this year, and in 2021, it was much more within the self. But there's been something with Mars and Gemini where I've been directing energy in a more collaborative and communicative way. And I didn't really make that connection until just now, and thinking about, you know, us being on this hike together. So thanks for being here with us, and having that extra set of eyes is always helpful too. Like,
I know,
you know, looking at each other's birth charts, you know, having another set of eyes to just see what we might be missing as individuals.
Totally.
Yeah. So thank you for being on the podcast today. I want to respect our time. I feel like, wow, an hour already went by.
Yeah. I can't even believe it. I know.
I know.
Time disappears into the void when we're all together.
It's a cosmic key every time.
Yeah.
Just keep on going.
Next time you come on, because you'll definitely be back on. I love, you are like the regulars on the show. We'll have to get into some dose of reality and things like that. But if you're wanting a dose of reality, if you really enjoy the Spiritual Gayz, you can always check out their podcast. Is this an offering that you're still releasing?
We are, it is a twice monthly podcast, but we have unchosen that a few times in the past month or two, just based on capacity. But we are trying to get back into the twice monthly release, and we love it. And we love the community built around it. And it's a lot of work, but it's also
A lot of fun.
and it helps Angel and I connect to each other in ways that we don't actually get to connect in our day-to-day lives. It's just like, it's a different space that we get to inhabit together. So even if nobody listened, we'd probably continue to do it.
Well, I'm interested to check in on the other side of the Mars and Gemini to see how it has evolved your offerings, whether that's through writing or communicating, or I know that you have a new retreat coming up.
Oh yeah, we do. When is this going to go live?
This will be on the Aries Full Moon. So the Aries Full Moon we're recording this just a little bit early. We're actually recording this on Wednesday, Mercury's Day. Feels quite appropriate.
Totally.
With all this Gemini talk.
So there's plenty of time then to sign up for our retreat that's happening at the end of October, the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, and then on Halloween. It's at Kripalu, which is this amazing retreat center in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. And we've never been, so we're just like very excited to get to go. It's supposed to be like gorgeous, wilderness, lake, and
the retreat is titled Aligning with Your Inner Guide. So the goal is to really help, empower all of our participants to really connect more deeply with themselves. It's actually very astrology heavy. We're going to do like a Chiron workshop. So we're actually diving deep into Chiron, and because, it's happening right around that Mars shift, we really want to make sure that everyone feels like they have workable tools, personal tools for themselves based on their chart and their Mars placements to go off and work on during that whole retrograde period.
Totally. But we are, so close to that cross quarter day that we can't help but get a little witchy too. So we're going to do some ancestral work and breath work, and we're going to kind of bring all of our witchy skills to the circle.
Yeah, and it'll be fun.
Amazing. I mean, this is right when Mars is stationing retrograde.
We literally say goodbye to everybody on the retreat on Monday the 31st, and then Mars stations retrograde. Yeah, so these are the last few days of direct Mars. Really is like Mars is just like slowing down to a stop.
Yeah, it'll be in the process of its retrograde moment.
But we'll have Jupiter in Pisces, which I'm very excited about, and we'll be in between eclipses, so it's like a good integration processing time.
Totally. Yeah, a few notable things about this full moon is that Jupiter's in Aries for this full moon, but is going back into Pisces for the rest of the fall.
I think I need it. I think I'm ready.
It feels like going from Aries back into Pisces and knowing it's going to go back into Aries. It feels like pressing the snooze alarm. Like Aries is the alarm. You're going to go back to sleep for a little bit.
Which isn't always like the most nourishing sleep, but it is the most enjoyable.
Yeah.
And the funkiest dreams.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah. Sometimes the dreams come in hot during that extra 5 minutes.
They're ready.
You're just like, how am I riding this massive turtle suddenly? Like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm. And speaking of eclipses, so after this full moon, we go into eclipse season, but this is just something else notable that I thought maybe we could just check in before we close out. This is the final Aries full moon before the nodes of fate shift into the Aries Libra axis. And so actually next spring during Aries season, we are gifted with 2 Aries new moons. So the first day of Aries season is an Aries new moon, and the last day of Aries season is a new moon. But that second new moon is the first eclipse in that axis. And so this is the final full moon in Aries before the North Node shifts into Aries next year. And we have that new moon solar eclipse at the end of Aries season next year. So the wheel is turning.
It is. I feel like using that Chiron key connection, like everything that's happening in Aries right now, like we're unlocking gates and we're letting people out, like we're letting our shadows out, we're letting some demons out, but we're also letting some like deeply gifted parts of ourself out. And then eclipse season is all of those aspects of ourself reshifting and finding a new way to engage. So fuck, it's going to be wild.
It's going to be wild. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all again in the future.
Likewise. And we look forward to having you on our show sometime very soon.
Can't wait. Happy Aries full moon to you.
Same to you.
Love to you and all your listeners.
Yes.
All right, Cosmic Cousins, thank you as always for tuning into the show. Without you, the show would not be possible, and particularly to the Patreon supporters of the show. Thank you so much for supporting the show. If you would like to help me as a solo entrepreneur doing my magic in the world, you could help me out by becoming a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/Cosmic Cousins. Every dollar goes a long way into helping produce this show. Also, I have some astrology reading availabilities for December. I have about 6 more slots open for this year, 2022. So if you know you want to work with me one-on-one for a reading, go ahead and check out those links in the show notes. It would be an honor to hold space for you in that way. All right, Cosmic Cousins, I'm wishing for you a Aries full moon that is energizing, illuminating, and reconnects you to the teacher and the healer that lives within. All right. Take sweet care, cousins, and remember, deep breaths.